Hello and welcome folks, Wizuko here, and today I am joined by my good friend and monotype competitive Pokemon trainer Alex, also known as Camerupt. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. What's up, everyone? My name is Alex, or I go as Camerupt in the Pokemon scene. I'm a competitive Pokemon player. I've been playing casually since I was a kid, but I'd say around the mark of Generation 5 I've gotten into competitive, so if you want to describe why we're here today, I suppose.
You see, the thing is, I have never been into competitive, and that is why I am very happy to have you here today, because even though I have never experienced Pokemon competitively, I'm very interested in that subject. You see, I'm a big Pokemon fan. Nevertheless, I enjoy the story, I enjoy the lore, the collectible aspect to Pokemon, I love merchandise, but I have never enjoyed random battles, especially not with other people as much. And I love the game and what it can provide, what it makes me feel, and how simple yet how complicated the game can get, and depending on how you play, of course. So I always did want to get into competitive playing. However, I felt like the game never prepared me to get into competitive playing. So let me ask you, how did you get into competitive Pokemon?
Okay, so that's a really good question and a very good point, because it is something I would say is probably a barrier to entry in competitive Pokemon. I don't feel the games truly prepare you for the entry to competitive. I mean, they do in some ways. For example, how I first got into competitive personally was, as I said, in Generation 5, I started playing the Battle Trains, which is the kind of post-game facility in that game. We just go onto the subway in Castilia. I don't remember the town, to be honest. And you just kind of do like battles against random NPCs over and over again and try to rack up a win streak. And then when I was playing, I could get a good few fights in. I could usually get to the boss, but by the time I got to the boss, I was like, this team is woefully unprepared to take on these challenges, and I just couldn't do it. And I was like, why is this the case? I thought I was pretty good at Pokemon, like I could beat the main games fine. And then I started researching into it and realized there's so much to Pokemon with regards to breeding, IVs, egg moves. It's not just, I suppose, as simple as the games make it out to be. So in that regard, there is definitely some way of getting into competitive through those post-game facilities like Battle Frontier as well. I think first debuted in Generation 3, if I'm not mistaken. That is basically the prime of competitive Pokemon. And from there, I actually started playing online on the DS because for some reason in Gen 4 it never worked online for me. I have no idea why. I probably would have been into competitive at that point if it did. But Generation 5, Black and White, decided it wants to work online. So I started playing with random people online and eventually kind of found my passion for competitive Pokemon. So a question for you would be, do you not find that some of the Pokemon games, from a casual perspective, maybe like lacking in challenge or lacking in content, especially some of the newer games? I see people complain that like there's not as much to do in them as there were in the older games. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I think that challenge and content isn't necessarily linked. Doing the same difficult fight or battle over and over again isn't really extended content to me, and especially not good content to me. It's rather drawing the content that you already have out. When it comes to difficulty, the games are not that difficult, I agree with that. But I don't see that as a bad thing, because it also makes it more accessible. Because what is very special about the Pokemon fandom is, in my opinion, the huge different ages or age groups that meet together in those fandoms and fan lobbies and communities. Because after all, Pokemon is one of those rare games that really people of all ages enjoy. And I think exactly because it is so accessible and not as difficult. And I always felt like I don't feel the need to be challenged to enjoy the story, the lore, or all the other aspects that I personally enjoyed about Pokemon all the time, much more than random battles, as I previously just said.
So that's a really good point, and I suppose it's something that I would like to point out, that a lot of people who play competitive don't exclusively play competitive. I'm not speaking for everyone, of course. There are some people who only play competitive, but for me, for example, I still really enjoy the casual side of the game, and it to me is almost a completely separate game to competitive. When a new Pokemon game comes out, I'm always looking forward to playing it. I'm always looking forward to, seeing how the game progresses, doing the gyms, catching Pokemon. and so on and so forth. I really enjoy the lore, I enjoy the monsters, I enjoy the world building of Pokemon, and that's almost a completely separate thing to competitive for me. However, I felt recently in some of the newer games, I'm left wanting for more after I finish the games, which is fine, and of course, different opinions for different people. Some people really enjoy what the game provides for them. Some people want for more. Some people really enjoy breeding Pokemon for the sake of breeding Pokemon. Some people enjoy breeding for competitive, and that's kind of where I started getting into breeding Pokemon. So I did quite enjoy breeding Pokemon, but I did it more for a competitive aspect. So looking for the best EVs, IVs, etc.
Funnily enough, I do that as well, but not to play competitively, but for me it's more to collect those Pokemon. At the moment, I personally work on a perfect living dex, meaning that I want every Pokemon in every evolutionary state with perfect EVs and IVs, and I just want this as a collection thing, And I never saw this as something that I would use competitively, mostly because I think I would suck at it anyway. And I feel like the frustration level is there just too high for me. The collection aspect is, for me, the most appealing part when it comes to Pokemon. There are just so many Pokemon that you can love or hate for so many different reasons. And I can't stress this enough, I love that you can really hate a Pokemon for reasons and not just for it looks dumb. That I feel that this diversity is what makes Pokemon so very special to other franchises and makes, in my opinion, Pokemon so special in general.
So that's a really good point, and definitely one that I feel like it's a heavy pill to swallow if you're getting into competitive, especially as a casual player. It's hard to come to terms with the fact that not all Pokemon are designed competitively or are even good competitively. And that's not to say you can't use these Pokemon, but oftentimes the case you are unnecessarily hindering yourself. For example, I love Camerupt, it's my favorite Pokemon, but it's not good. Competitively, it's bad. Will I still use it? Yes, on the occasion I do. I'll find a way to fit it into a niche, but if I wanted to be deadly serious about competitive, or I wanted to win, it probably would just be in my best interest to forgo my favorite Pokemon and just use a better Pokemon. So it is kind of unfortunate that for a lot of casual players, as you said, they have a special connection or a special bond with their favorite Pokemon. They really like to use them, and it can be upsetting or it can be unfortunate if you love using a Pokemon but then realize it's just not good and competitive. So that definitely is a barrier to entry. However, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing, because on the reverse side, it actually forces you to use Pokemon that you'd otherwise probably never consider using casually. And in a way, you actually build a special bond between those. In fact, some of my recent favorite Pokemon, like Barraskewda or Kingdra, came from a love of competitive. I realized how fun they are to use in competitive. Then I started looking into their lore, looking at artwork and stuff, and it really gave me a kind of a deeper appreciation for the Pokemon that I wouldn't ordinarily have.
Yeah, you do say that, but even though I do not play Pokemon competitively, I do watch Pokemon battles. And whenever I do, I often do see the same Pokemon used over and over. And to me, that doesn't feel all that much like thinking outside your own comfort zone, It rather feels like everyone is pretty much using the same team.
So that's a really good point, and it's not something I can die hard defend, because for certainly that is a problem in competitive Pokemon, but I don't think it's as bad as some people make it out to be. A lot of surface level competitive for sure is the same Pokemon be used. It's easier to just kind of use a mold, if that makes sense, find a team that works online and use that team, or take elements from other teams that work and just use that team. So unfortunately, you see that a lot, especially at maybe mid-level play, which is completely fine as well. I'm not chastising people for using teams like that, but I do feel at very high levels of competitive, you start to see some really interesting creative teams. I, for one, am still shocked daily by some of the Pokemon I see on competitive. I play quite a lot, and even still sometimes I see a Pokemon or see a strategy being used and I'm like, that's so cool, I've never seen that before, and it's a great talking point. It's a great way to meet new players, is talk about oh, where did you come up with that, or how did you come up with that, what was your thought process? And with that you can build making new Pokemon, new teams, new creative strategies. So there is, I think, always something to learn. And a great example of that being in 2014, Sejun Park. used a Pachirisu to shake up the competitive scene and win grand finals of the World Championships, which is crazy because previously to that, no one would have even thought about using Pachirisu until this guy decided, this is what I'm going to do, and it completely shook up the world of Pokemon.
Fuck the system.
Exactly. Of course, that said, there is always going to be an element of competitive Pokemon becoming stale over time. People will eventually tend to use the same things. Eventually a meta will settle and the same kind of Pokemon will be used more frequently later in a generation typically than early. Which is often why there are different rule sets implemented every year to try and prevent that happening.
I see, but from what I read online, especially Twitter, for example. I mean, maybe Twitter is a bad example. However, it still gave me the impression that those rule sets, they're rarely well received. Or what is your experience with that?
So, it's definitely not a perfect solution. I will admit there could potentially be better ones out there. I'm not qualified enough to say what they would be. However, I do think rotating rule sets is a temporary fix, especially in metas that become completely stale over time. So metas in any competitive scene, I feel, will eventually, as I said, tend to a certain equilibrium, if you will. It will settle down and the same things will be used over and over again. This would definitely especially be the case in Pokemon, where there isn't regular balance patches. Outside of the odd time there is a balance change between generations, but generations are so far apart that year to year there wouldn't necessarily be changes. So these rotating rule sets, they ban certain Pokemon or ban certain strategies. I guess in a way it forces your hand to have to play different things, which maybe isn't the best way. Maybe we should be encouraged to use other Pokemon to do other means, but unfortunately it is, I suppose, the best of a bad bunch, if that makes sense. So I'm not going to completely defend it, but it works.
I suppose so. And when you come to discuss that, you gotta admit that in the end, even with rule sets, there is still a ton of Pokemon to choose from, right? So I think even though it's a little let down, I think it's a relatively insignificant one. I mean, it's bad if your favorite Pokemon is on the end, which is going to be cut, of course. So I think that is very subjective to really make an opinion on this, because it is very hard to decide what Pokemon to cut, because people have a very emotional bond to their Pokemon and will react accordingly when those are cut. But looking back, you mentioned that there are tons of different ways to play competitively, right? And now that we're talking about rule sets, I came to wonder, what do you mean by that exactly? I thought that competitive gaming was just building teams, playing in tournaments. What different kinds of competitive gaming are there?
So I touched briefly on it earlier, and I probably should have gone into more detail. So there would be two main forms of competitive, which would be VGC, which stands for Video Game Championships. This is the official format that's actually run by the Pokemon company, and this is what you'd see when they advertise the Pokemon World Championships. And strangely enough, it's actually entirely done in a 2v2 basis. And what I mean by that is the Pokemon battles aren't 1v1 like you do in the games, they're actually 2 versus 2. So why they don't prepare you for that in the games, I actually have no idea. And then on the other hand, there is a 1v1 format as well, which is generally fan-run by a website called Smogon. And since the games aren't necessarily balanced for 1v1 Pokemon, the fans actually balance the games themselves. So they do keep the core Pokemon. They'll never change stats or moves of the Pokemon, but they decide kind of as a council or as a community what Pokemon are too good for singles, what strategies are too good for singles, what needs to be banned, what needs to be changed, or what needs to be limited. So in that alone, there are so many different ways to play singles competitive even. There are tons of different formats based on the usage of the Pokemon. You can do formats that are primarily only legendary Pokemon, or in my case, I focus mainly on a format called monotype, which is a singles format where you play using only one type of Pokemon. So the best way I can describe this would be basically you're take the role of a gym leader. For example, I am the rock gym leader, so I can only use rock type Pokemon, and I fight other players who can only use one Pokemon type. So I might be fighting a Pokemon person who uses all grass type Pokemon or all psychic type Pokemon. So it's definitely a very interesting meta. It's quite different to a traditional singles or any traditional form of competitive Pokemon, but still keeps the basic format while kind of giving you the immersion of, I suppose, being a gym leader. And even then, people run different leagues. For example, you can have a gym league, for example, I could take the role of a ice type gym leader, and then we could have 7 other gym leaders, and then people come from around the world to challenge the 8 gym leaders and then challenge the other 4. And it's kind of just a fun way of getting to know the community and kind of engaging with other players.
That sounds very interesting and actually very, very fun, and is much closer to the game, weirdly enough, than what the Pokemon Company seems to do. Because from how I understood that now, I feel like the Pokemon Championships doesn't really seem to connect all that much to the real game that you as a casual player, or me as a casual player, would actually play. And it's very funny that the fan community is much closer to the actual game than the Pokemon Company itself. But I guess that's why we also have Nuzlocke, right? I mean, the game itself doesn't really prepare you all that much for the challenge that competitive gameplay really is. I mean, it is so much harder to actually win against a human than it is against an NPC. It is unbelievable. The gap between that is really impressive. So when I had my first try in playing competitive, of course, I sucked. And I thought, okay, then I would play a Nuzlocke to prepare me a little bit better. And I know there is not one specific way of playing a Nuzlocke, there are different ones, but basically a Nuzlocke would always force you to get by with only your Pokemon abilities, without any items, and also make you play with Pokemon you might not have picked otherwise. You see, like, when you're only allowed to catch the first Pokemon that you met, for example. However, I don't know about you, but sometimes a Nuzlocke would escalate completely with me and become pure grind. I am so scared to lose my Pokemon that I would often resort to grind level. So that doesn't really help all that much when you think that in a competitive scene, all Pokemon would be locked to one level anyway. So do you think a Nuzlocke is actually all that good to get better, or to get prepared for competitive playing then?
So I will admit, I've only actually ever tried one Nuzlocke in my life. I think it must have been about 4 weeks ago or something, and it went very, very badly. Rest in peace, Snake Mail, gone but not forgotten. I do feel like it has a nice blend of competitive and casual. It's arguably more difficult and competitive in some aspects, and not as difficult in others. However, the fundamentals of learning to use Pokemon and their natural abilities, their stats, their movesets without the use of items, certainly transfers over to competitive. So if you are someone who's interested in Nuzlocke, or someone who's interested in competitive Pokemon, or neither, I do think there is fundamentals there. So if you are interested in trying the other, I would say absolutely do that. That said, there are plenty of other challenges run by people in the Pokemon community, like minimum battles or Professor Oak challenge, solo runs. They're all legitimate ways of enjoying Pokemon and finding challenge in its own right. So just play whatever you are comfortable with, or play whatever you really enjoy. Do you yourself play any challenge runs or have any interest in them?
Well, I actually did play quite a few challenge runs, but I only once completed one. And in that one, I cheated a little bit. You see, when I played Pokemon Yellow version for the DS, I wanted to use the same Pokemon Ash, or as some people know him as Satoshi, used in the anime. And I kind of got as far as he did, which is, well, not quite completing the game. But I gave myself a pass for the Elite Four and allowed myself to evolve the Pokemon now, and then I've beaten the game. Which, for me, I count this as a win. The concept of a challenge run is awesome to me, because it can be very unique, right? I mean, you can challenge yourself to whatever you'd want. Beat the game with normal types only? Fine. Beat the game with only the starter Pokemon? Awesome. Beat the game with only baby Pokemon? Try it. Sounds hard, but you do you. You can challenge yourself with whatever you want, and if you fail or want to give up, I think that's okay too, because I actually did that a couple of times, and because I actually love to start challenge runs. I love to come up with challenges, and I like to start that, and they entertain me so much. for a while, and even if I don't complete them, I personally feel like this is a valid way of enjoying the game too, because that is what the game is all about in the end. I feel like in the competitive game scene, it always feels like you have to enjoy this certain part of Pokemon, and you kind of feel like you need to enjoy certain parts. Just enjoy it whatever you like about Pokemon. If you enjoy just the music, then so be it. I think it is important that you find out what do you like and how can you make this part more enjoyable for yourself and not maintain some sort of image or something. Fuck that. Just enjoy the game.
So I honestly couldn't agree with you more on that one. If I was to give two pieces of advice to anyone watching this, firstly would be, do not be afraid to try new things in Pokemon. You never know what you're going to enjoy. You might find that you love competitive, maybe you love breeding for a perfect living dex, maybe you really enjoy challenge runs. There's so much to Pokemon that I honestly would encourage everyone to try different things, and maybe you'll deepen your love for it, because if you watch this far into the video, chances are you enjoy Pokemon. So just go out there and try new things. I really encourage it. And my second piece of advice was, specifically with regards to competitive or even challenge runs, don't be afraid to fail. So many people are put off by loss or saying they're not good, they're not going to get good at Pokemon. Don't be afraid to fail. Honestly, I've been playing for close to 10 years now. I was not good when I started competitive. I was very bad. I could barely beat the NPCs in the game. Now, I would consider myself a pretty good competitive player, especially in my niche of monotypes. I know it very well. I can build teams of basically any type, and I'm very comfortable in my level of play. So much to the extent that I think I'm able to teach others how to improve their game. And I didn't get there overnight. It took me years of playing, years of learning from other players, talking to people, getting to know the community, because despite what some people say, and there is an issue of toxicity in competitive gaming, and that's no different than Pokemon. But there are small, good niches out there in the competitive scene of genuinely great players who are willing to be friendly, who are willing to help you improve, and just want to see the competitive scene in general grow. So if that is something you're interested in, feel free to check out my channel. Hopefully it's linked down below. I do a lot of competitive videos. I do a lot of competitive guides. I'll show you how to build certain types, walk you through how to use Pokemon in hopefully an educational and friendly manner. And I do have a Discord as well you can check out in my bio. I have tons of great friendly players there who are always willing to help. So don't be afraid to try getting into competitive. There are resources and I'm there for you if you ever need help.
Thank you so much, Alex. I was very happy to have you here, and I can also just recommend check out Alex's channel. He has tons of cool stuff there, and even if you're not into competitive playing like I am, I just enjoy watching him play with his team and just explain basically how you could come up with a team like that as well. And I can only agree with you in the end, because a game is supposed to be fun, and whatever makes you happy, just try and figure out what you like. It goes like that in life, I think. But what do you think? Do you play Pokemon competitively or solo? Did you enjoy Nuzlocks or challenge runs? Or do you feel like they're pointless? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you to everyone who watched our video. I hope you enjoyed and learned a thing or two about the competitive side of Pokemon. If you're interested, you can find Alex's channel in the info description down below. It's also linked in the video at the end. On my channel, new gaming related videos are up every Wednesday, and I hope to see you in the next. Until then, have it good. Bye!
Thanks for having me. Take care, guys.